What's up, everyone? I am Jamie with Three Little Goats Homestead, and today we are back in my office. I feel like it's been forever since I have filmed an intro in my office, and that is because today we are going to initiate some voiceover mode, and I'm going to show you how I freeze dry our goat milk. Now, I freeze dry our goat milk for a number of reasons. One, I'm able to store it for long periods of time. That way, if for some reason my girls dry up and I don't have any fresh milk, I always have it on hand. And I also really like using freeze-dried goat milk in our soaps. It just makes it a lot easier. I don't have to worry about scorching the milk with lye. I don't have to worry about the milk accelerating my soap batter. And it's just one of the easier ways to use goat milk in your soap is when it's freeze dry or in powder form. So that's one of the main things that we use ours for. But I like having a whole bunch extra on hand just in case of emergency. So without further ado, I am going to initiate some voiceover mode, and I'm going to show you how we turn our goat's milk into freeze dried goat's milk. So let's get started. Alright, so of course, in order to freeze dry our goat milk, we're going to need to collect some goat milk. So we have Pixie up on the milk stand, and she is so graciously volunteered her milk for this. So we are going to get all of our milk, and then we're actually just going to freeze it. I freeze mine in ice cube trays. I find I can get more on the freeze dryer tray if I freeze them in ice cubes and then put them on instead of just pouring the milk right onto the trays, and plus that can get really messy. And I also find that silicone molds are a lot easier to get the milk out than the regular like plastic ice cube trays. I do use both, but the silicone is a lot easier, so if you have that as an option, I would totally choose that over the traditional ice cubes. Now, depending on what type of freeze dryer you have, this is going to be different. I'm running an older version of the firmware on this freeze dryer, so I'm just going to follow the prompts on it and pre-freeze my machine and get it all ready to go to put the frozen milk in there. And once my machine is ready, I'm just going to go ahead and pop all of my trays in. Now this is the small freeze dryer, so I only have 3 small trays, which I can do about 2 gallons of milk if I freeze them in the silicone trays beforehand. So for about 2 gallons of milk, it's going to take about 24 hours for this to completely process. And once it's processed, it comes out. They look exactly like they did when I put them on the tray. And then I just check them before I take them out of the machine to make sure they're completely dry, and I put them away for storage. If I know I'm going to be using them pretty soon with making soap, I just put them in a jar and put a oxygen absorber in it. If I'm going to store them away for long term, I do put them in Mylar, and I vacuum seal the Mylar with an oxygen absorber. But it's completely up to you on how you want to save them. Alright, so that is pretty much how we freeze dry our goat milk. It's pretty easy. I know not everybody can afford a freeze dryer, but for us it was pretty much a necessity, and we've had ours for about 7 years, so it is more than paid for itself. But if you want to store your goat's milk in other ways, you can always freeze it. I find that the best way to freeze your goat's milk is the fresher the better. If you let goat's milk sit in the fridge for too long and then freeze it, it tends to separate more when you defrost it, which is perfectly fine. You can still use it, but if you don't want to have to worry about it separating too much, always milk, then freeze. It's the best way to do it. And then, of course, you could always dehydrate your goat milk. I don't personally dehydrate my milk because it does heat the milk up and it does cause caramelization, and you can reconstitute it, but it's definitely not going to taste the same as it would if you were to freeze dry it. It's definitely not going to taste the same if you froze it or if it was fresh. So that's something to keep in mind, but you can dehydrate it for future use in like soaps and things. It works perfectly fine for those. And then one of the most recent questions I've gotten on some of my soap making videos is how long does my goat milk last when I freeze dry it? I freeze dried this guy, about 2 years ago. This is actually filled. This is what I use for my soap making, and as you can see, it's a really fancy setup that I have here in the Ziploc bag. But I just got it with an oxygen absorber. Every once in a while I'll replace the oxygen absorber in it, but it is still powdered and perfectly good. Would I drink this one? Probably not, but I definitely use it in my soap making at least once a week with 0 problems. So that is what I have got for you guys this week. If you like this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. It really does help. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. We put out new videos every single week. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye.